welcome people who are just coming in. We'll just give a few more minutes and we'll get started. Madison, are y'all doing anything this weekend?
Nothing too fun. We're actually planning on going to DC Easter weekend, so we're chilling and playing it low this weekend. What about you?
Nice. Well, it is my daughter's birthday on Sunday. She's going to be 4 years old, which is hard to believe. So we're going to be doing all kinds of birthday things, toddler things. We put together a big girl bike for her, so we're going to get rid of that. Yeah, so hopefully enjoy some nice weather. Cool.
Yeah, happy birthday, Eleanor.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Well, I think people keep kind of trickling in, but I don't know if we want to start with some intros. Madison?
Yeah, so hey, my name is Madison Caprera. I'm one of Dash's newer members. If you follow us on any of our social medias, hey, that's me. Before Dash, I was at the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh. So my background's kind of more so in museums and nonprofits. So that being said, fairly new to this industry, but it's been really fun kind of lending an outsider's perspective on industry topics. Especially some of the ones that we're going to be speaking on today. So it'll be fun.
Awesome. Great. And for those that don't know me, my name is Marin Hayes. I'm a producer here at Dash. My background is in photography originally. And as most producers, I kind of wound my way around a few different careers and ended up in the agency world. And then I went in-house for a software company and worked on their video team for a few years. And now I've been at Dash for 2 years, which is hard to believe. So time flies.
Well, you're having fun, yeah. So if you guys have been kind of following along with past Mograph lunches, you'll probably kind of get the layout that Mac and Jay have previously done when it comes to kind of discussing things. So there's always, a news story, kind of like a portfolio piece, and then an overarching theme. So to kind of give a brief overview on what we're going to be speaking on today, the news story we're discussing revolves around a group of women with hearing loss in Gaza who make animations to raise awareness on the impairment community, which is super cool. The portfolio piece we're going to be discussing is titled Career Limiting. It was made for Global Women New Zealand, and it kind of revolves around the topic of motherhood penalty within the work sphere. And then the overarching topic that we're going to be discussing is just Women's History Month, because this is the last Friday of Women's History Month. So super relevant, and also why you have Marin and I here instead of Mac and Jay. So I guess I'll just dive right into the news story that we have. I was doing my daily perusal of global events, kind of wading through all the weird shit. We got the shrimp tails and cereal story. But I found this one that was super cool and uplifting. So a group of Palestinian women, all with, varying degrees of hearing loss, are starting to use stop animation to make short films about their condition. And they're using this to teach children and to teach maybe even uneducated adult groups. But the group is comprised of 8 women. All have said that because of both the fact that they're women and the fact that they do have hearing impairments, they have very few career options. So along with these animations being advocacy tools for their community, they're also hoping that it becomes a stable source of income for themselves and for their families. So far, they only have 2 short films. One kind of discusses sign language, how they go about using it in their daily lives and just kind of destigmatizing it. And the second one is kind of advocating for their right to work. In Gaza, unemployment, I think, is around 49%. And I'm sure it's even higher for those who identify as women and, those who have impairments like they do. But it was really cool, looking at their animation process. It was super simple. They basically, the women just designed the characters. They draw up some images on scrap paper, and then they shoot the films with their cell phone cameras and use, a free stop motion app to kind of put it together. And then when all that's said and done, they get their coworkers who don't have hearing loss to add their voices into the mix. And I thought it was super empowering that these women, with, not a lot of job prospects due to, society's labeling them, have kind of taken control and decided that they wanted to be self-dependent and have started doing so in a way that they just do, making films fun. And it's a way that they're, advocating for their individual selves and then for their community that they're a part of, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. If y'all haven't seen the article, there's a Reuters article. So you can Google Reuters Women with Hearing Loss in Gaza, and you can watch. They do some interviews with the women and show a little bit, like Madison was saying, of their process. And I think it just really hones in on like accessibility and making animation and motion and graphics and art available to everyone. And these women, like you said, Madison, really taking it into their own hands and educating other people is just a really powerful piece. So y'all be sure to Google that if you haven't read the news story. It came out this month for Women's History Month.
Yep, take a look.
Awesome. Well, I will jump into our project that we're spotlighting. If y'all haven't seen, go to Vimeo and search Global Women Career Limiting. I'll start describing it as some of y'all might be navigating to it, but this piece popped up in the Panimation Slack channel earlier this month. And I love this piece so much. The style, the humor, the music and the sound design, there's so much being said without actually saying it. But then behind this quirky, fun spot is, a really serious message. The video is made by Passion Pictures, directed by Anna Manzares, and it was released this month for International Women's Day. And at the end of the video, it links out to an article on globalwomen.org.nz in New Zealand. And it's essentially based on a study that was done in New Zealand about the motherhood penalty. And now I'll get into quoting the article a little bit. And basically the motherhood penalty is described as a systemic disadvantage that women encounter in their careers once becoming a mother. It encompasses everything from earning an average of 12% less across a lifetime of working, despite working comparable hours, through being passed up for promotions and opportunities and advancements simply for being a mother. So if y'all missed it earlier, I'm the mother of a 4-year-old. I'm really lucky in that I haven't experienced those exact biases in my career, but I do know the social pressures that most women are put under, and that only seems to increase in motherhood. So clearly this is a subject I'm passionate about. If y'all haven't read the article or seen the video, please look it up. I just think the spot is wonderful. In fact, all of Anna's work is great. You can look it up on Anna Manzares, ANNAMANTZARS.SE. She's Swedish. So if you go check out her website, all of her work has this stop motion style. She's got a ton of behind the scenes on her Instagram. So you can really kind of see how she works, which is fantastic. So go check out her work if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I'm a sucker for dark humor. You have like this woman who's doing all these ridiculous things, like cutting her boss's tie and just randomly going into his office and eating his lunch.
And then spitting it out.
Like, oh my God, it's hilarious. But then you have like, again, that, overall message of this woman can do all of these things and not be penalized. And then, women who have children are.
Right.
So dark, but funny with an important message.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Our topic, which we said the overarching topic is going to be Women's History Month, just because this is, the last Friday of the month. It's, March of every year, became nationally recognized in 1981. But originally it was only given a week. Now we have a month, and I think that happened in like 87. But Marin and I were talking earlier, and she was like, "Oh, like I just thought this was like maybe a social media like online holiday. I didn't realize it was like a nationally recognized thing." Which, to be honest, I didn't either until maybe like a year or two ago. But
yeah, I just was surprised that originally it stems back to it was a single day that was commemorated in honor of the suffragettes' first meeting, and that happened back in 1909. So like Madison said, in 1987, Congress declared it Women's History Month, but I just think that it's important to recognize where we've been. So I didn't realize the connection with the original suffragettes movement. And so I just I think it's important to take a moment and remember where we've been, and in 100 years, how far we've come. And then there's also still a ton of work to do. And so that's kind of what this month and this message means to me personally, that, looking back at history, there's been a lot of work, but we've got a lot of work to go. And this week, in fact, I think it was on Wednesday, was Equal Pay Day, which essentially marks the day into this current year on which it takes women on average to earn what men did last year. Essentially, it's an 18% difference in the disparity, and that breaks down even further with women of color. So it's important to recognize that while this is an important topic and we've done a lot, that we've got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's equal parts just, celebrating the contributions women have made thus far, just, the impact that we've made on the world, but also it's a great way to draw attention to, the not so equal treatment it's still taking place. So this is obviously a topic that Marin and I can, speak on for like hours. So to kind of narrow down what exactly we did want to speak on, we hosted a poll on some of our socials at the beginning of the week, and we got a lot of great suggestions. So just to name a few, we've got discussing women's bodies and newness being used by men in art. We've got gender inequality in the industry, ethics within the industry, the cult of personality in Mograph, and imposter syndrome. And although, like I said, I'm fairly new to the industry, so I can't speak super in depth on some of these topics. What I can speak on, coming from kind of like an art history background, is the way that women's bodies and newness have and are still being used by men in art. This is probably one of the most heavily debated, controversial topics in all of my art history seminars in college. And it always came down to one of two sides. Is this a means of exploitation, or is this a means of empowerment? And they always say, beauty is in, the eye of the beholder or whatever. And for me, I think it comes down to kind of like a case-by-case thing. I look at who the artist is and what their intentions are when using, the female form for their message. Even looking back in history, just like the female form in the 1800s was either, depicted in, one of two ways. You have either highly exaggerated, super curvaceous figures, or you have women being depicted as kind of just for their reproductive function. So you have a lot of breastfeeding pieces, which isn't, there's nothing wrong with that. But then when you compare that to how men were depicted with their newness, you have them depicted as these heroic figures and gods and leaders just standing super tall and proud. So that's where the problem comes into play when you start making that comparison. And now, I can't speak on every work and, every artist, every creative, but the most problematic way that you see us tend to be depicted is in a way that's pretty hypersexualized, and sometimes, a lot of times actually, can be super demeaning. And to relate this back to, this industry, again, going back to that poll of topics people wanted to speak on, Beeple kept coming up, and I was like, what's a Beeple? What is this? So I went to Marin and I asked her, and she had the pleasure of introducing me to everything going on with all of that right now.
Yeah, it's highly topical given the recent Christie's auction sale for $69 million. So
very interesting.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Beeple did a collection of his everydays that was auctioned as NTFs, not auctioned off on Christie's, and it's, I believe, the third most an artist has ever been paid for their work in all of time. Go on, Madison.
I don't even know how in-depth I should get into some of these works, but they're really, some of them are super upsetting and demeaning and use kind of female anatomy and even male anatomy on female figures in a way that's just upsetting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting to kind of delve into. But that was one of the ways that I thought that we could kind of link that back to the topic of, women's forms being used within male created art. know if you want to get people to chime in on, their opinions or thoughts on any of this.
Yeah, I mean, and as we get into the more of the discussion portion of this, y'all, if you're new to Clubhouse, you can raise your hand at the bottom right there, I think. You can raise your hand and then you can chime in on any of the topics that we've discussed on the Gaza story, on the career limiting, or some of the discussions that we're going to have about kind of just general women in motion. So I don't see anyone that's raising their hand at this point, but I'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of how we represent women and women's bodies is, who the artist is, like you were saying, Madison, and who is involved in those discussions. And I think this is kind of getting to a larger point later, that we need to have women and marginalized genders in points of leadership and bringing them up into roles where they can kind of say like, hey, I don't know that we exactly need to have a nude woman in this piece. Like, is that what we should be doing? I think right now, people is a whole other subject, but in terms of just using nudity, I think it's having the checks and balances and asking someone, is that exactly what we should be doing, and having a different perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Having that voice of kind of the people or individuals that you're depicting should be one of the top priorities when it comes to things like that.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be like an afterthought. We've talked a lot about this, Madison, of like, they should be involved in those conversations. It's not like a check. Exactly. It's not like a checkbox, like, oh, right, we should get someone to like check this before it's like done. It's getting their input as, something's being produced.
Yeah, exactly. Go into one of the other topics that we got from those polls?
Yeah. Let's see. One of the topics, as Madison said, was imposter syndrome. And this is something that, I was aware of as a term. And then I started like reading more about it. I was like, oh my God, this is me. I just never thought about it that way. And I'll say that nothing has humbled me more or made me feel more like an imposter than the intersection of motherhood and work.
I can't even imagine.
Before I had my daughter, I never really heard anyone talking about how hard parenting is. And, obviously I love her so much, but it's a lot. And so, I was just thrown into it, and, you don't really know what you're doing, and nobody else talks about how hard it is. And we all ended up normal. So like, clearly parenting's not hard. So it's just gotta be me, that no one else is failing. And obviously that's wrong. So something that I've personally tried to do is, just since becoming a mom, is show both the positive and the negative. It's just, I think, a huge way to break down imposter syndrome is being honest and normalizing it for those around you and for yourself. I think a lot of times we just set a really high standard and think that everyone else is at that same standard, and that's just not reality. And I think the same can be said about our work. So most of the time we're seeing amazing animations or work that are being posted, and we think, wow, people have what they did, they have it together. They did it with ease, there weren't any issues, but was that the case? That's, highly unlikely. So I just think it's really important to be honest about imposter syndrome, almost like normalizing it, I think has really helped me. Another thing that a friend and I were chatting about was, advice on imposter syndrome. And she said that whether it's in your career or your personal life and you're struggling with this, write down positive feedback when you get it. So when you feel those like imposter syndrome thoughts coming through, like, am I qualified to do this? Am I qualified for anyone to be listening to me talk about women in motion? I don't know. So when I have those thoughts in my head, if I'd written down like positive feedback that I've gotten over the years about, work that I've done or me personally, I think it's just a good check and balance, because in those moments where you're doubting yourself, you have something that's concrete and that you can look at and say like, no, I am badass and awesome, and I absolutely have the ability to do X or Y. And I think that's how you not overcome imposter syndrome, because I don't know that you can overcome it. I don't want to use that word, but like, I think it's a way to reframe your thoughts. And I think that's how you deal with it. I don't know if anyone else has had that kind of experience, or if they have any tips on imposter syndrome. And, you know, as artists, I think we talked about this in a previous Clubhouse, just the idea of nothing's ever finished. We're always perfecting it, right? And I think that perfectionism really gets to people. And so it's letting things be good enough, you know, that's hard to do.
It is hard to do. And, you know, sometimes it can have that kind of internal factor, you telling yourself that. Mm-hmm. But also other times that I think should be acknowledged is you have external factors that make you feel that way. I mean, even pivoting off of that, maybe not just even, you know, being a woman, but being like a younger woman or somebody who's just getting within the workforce. I am coming from Pittsburgh. It's a very blue collar town. So everyone has that mindset that, you know, you start where everyone started, you work your way up, you know, you climb your way up that totem pole. And I remember graduating, moving back home, and getting kind of like forced into that same mindset of it, you know, it doesn't matter what education I got. It doesn't matter the skill set that I have, you know, how talented I am. Because everyone else did, was forced to start at the bottom. And, you know, none of my skills, none of my talents were acknowledged. So I think that mentality is also pretty harmful. Just pivoting off the whole, like, not only being a woman, there's so many different kind of like aspects to it.
Yeah. I think sometimes, and I've got some hands raised, so I'll make this short and then we can start hearing from some other people. But I think sometimes we think that like life is happening to us and that we're not accomplishing it. So you know, like, I don't know how I got that job, but I got it. Like, no, you worked really hard for that job. And I think it's taking moments like that and really making sure you own that success, because otherwise you just feel like life is happening to you and you're not really in charge of it. And I think that is just going to add to that kind of imposter feeling.
Hey y'all, thanks again for joining us for Mograph Lunch. As a reminder, this is just the first part of a longer conversation that happens every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Clubhouse. We'll continue the NPG conversation as we talk about news, projects, and general industry advice. And then we'll open up the door on Clubhouse to answer questions live, interact with some of your peers, and get to know some of the folks in the industry. Follow the link below for more information, and we will see you next week.